you're going to climb Mount Everest. What's the goal? And I, of course, said to get to the top. And he goes, wrong. I was like, uh-oh. I hate getting called out in groups anyways. And he goes, no, the answer is you want to climb to the top, you want to summit, and you want to come down safely. And he said 80% of all deaths happen on the way down of Mount Everest than the way up. And when you go to sell a business, you only have the eyes on how to sell the business. You sell it, but what happens on the way down?
Welcome to another episode of the Profitable Property Management Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Muela, and I'm here today for a fairly unprecedented, exciting episode. I'm talking to my man, Ben Sencenbaugh. Let's just get this thing out of the way.
Right,
Ben, what's the news, brother?
Well, I mean, it's a longer story, but yeah, last month, we merged or were acquisitioned by Rhome. Part of the associate family, and we're super excited to be here. It's been quite a journey, and I'm just glad everything worked out. It's just a perfect scenario.
10 years, baby.
10 years to the day, from the day of buying 50% of the Realty Medics until selling the Realty Medics to Associa for is exactly July 1st, 2013 to July 1st, 2023.
Crazy. So, 10 years to the day.
It's wild. It's a scripted. Couldn't script it better.
Yeah. So, what's unique for me here is the fact that I've known you for a good chunk of that duration,
9+ years,
and been able to see the path as it's kind of come along. My experience is that in reverse, everything looks like it was like planned out, organized. And I mean, this is an awesome situation. I'm really happy for you. It looks like every move was kind of laid out. Obviously, it doesn't really work like that. You only know the next move that's in front of you. But when you look back, man, like, is this more or less, this was the plan, is like getting to where we're at right now? Yeah,
it was. Looking back, yes, it seemed like the perfect scripted plan to take it from 200 doors to 1,650 and being employee 3 to employee 62. I mean, all of those things all went hand in hand. And looking back on how the decisions were made and how the right team was put into place, the right methodology, the right tech, the right relationships, including yourself and a lot of other people. Everything looking back was very calculated and very lucky. I think you have to be lucky.
100%.
You got to meet the right people at the right time and when you need them. And it just really did work out. I mean, I just can't. There's definitely some stumbles along the way, and that's the exciting things about, or when you go to stumble, is how can you fix it? And being a mechanic at heart, that was fun, just to how to orchestrate this with all of the people that I've known and all the teams and stuff together. It's been a fun run, and it's not over yet.
Still in it. Still heavily involved.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the distinctives that's worth highlighting right out of the gate.
Right.
There are fundamentally different types of buyers, different types of acquirers.
There is.
Rhome is known for having more of a cash flow orientation.
Right.
Philosophically, generally speaking, folks that value cash flow tend to make fewer changes to the business because they're wanting the stable business to continue to produce the cash flow.
Right.
When you had discussions with a number of different types of buyers, right? You got exposed to the full panoply. How did you think about finding the right match and the right partner, knowing that it wasn't just the size of the check?
Right. Well, number one was taking care of the staff, the people that have been here for 9 or 10 years and who have really worked hard to grow alongside me. I couldn't sit there at the end of the day and say, you probably have a job. And by the way, I just got paid a lot of money. couldn't do that. And I hadn't found a partner who was willing to do that and also pay at least a little something. So, those other partnerships, that they're good for certain models. It just wasn't mine. I thought ours didn't need a whole lot of fixing, didn't need a whole lot of extra support. I thought we ran a really good ship and still do. And so I wasn't looking for someone to come pick us apart either. I mean, maybe it's just being a little conceited, or I really like how we operate, and I think we operate differently than most people, and we were profitable doing it. So I didn't really want to give up and have someone, pick off the good parts, take our contracts, and then see what's left. I think there's still a lot of what we have built that is unique, that can help other people, not just to hit pause or power down and have all of the technology and processes that we wrote that was unique to us just go away. And that, I mean, that's the second part of it, but I could power down if I knew that everyone was going to be okay. And when this opportunity came, it was a no-brainer. I mean, Charles Riska and Kit Guerin, they're great guys. It was immediate connection. It was just you couldn't script it any better. Just to meet them in the right moment. Already had a different LOI on the table, and then things like this happen, and it went really fast, and it was clean, and there was no I should have done this or should have done that. Every box was checked, every single one.
It felt like it was really fast at the end, because it's not like the idea of selling was new to you. You had talked to a number of parties for really...
talked to only two, but aware and talked to, and inquire with a lot of people who have sold or people who have been in talks. I've always been in the talks, but usually I didn't get past like the second checkbox of, what are you going to do? You want it on, you're going to make it go onto your platform, all those things. I just never listened past that. So once we kept on checking the boxes, it was okay.
Let's rewind the tape a bit. When you think about the discrete eras or epochs of the business, what were like the inflection points? You came in 10 years ago. What were the meaningful inflection points in you building this thing and getting to this point?
Well, there's probably a lot of them if we go step by step, but walking in to a business that I didn't know much about, I kind of blindly left corporate life and jumped into property management just because I thought it was an opportunity that probably could be fixed in some way. And I thought there was also recurring revenue, which I liked, and there was no expansion limits of retail or something like that. So going in and then understanding the books, the accounting side, that was the first heavy lift, is to be triple tied out in that folio and actually understand your numbers. Looking back at that was, I tried to make heads or tails, like how are we going to make money? But looking at the books and not having good numbers, you can't make good decisions. So it took a long time of fixing that. And then at the same time, like looking at the process of property management and the different roles and trying to catch, low hanging fruit. Like, we used to, as long as a vendor submitted an invoice, we'd pay it. Now, have we paid that before? Well, I don't know. It was simple things like that. Like, no, we got to tell our vendors when we pay, and we already have an open bucket for it. And then, okay, this invoice needs to be paid. Not, I submit an invoice, I get paid. Simple things like that. But we were going back and auditing it. We found later on, oh man, look at these vendors. They're simple stuff. And then looking at, just the different processes. What's efficient? How are we keeping track of stuff? How can one person leave and then another person pick up? What's really important, and what's the best way of doing this? Again, I hadn't done property management before, so back in 2013, who has done property management, done it well? And so it became like a thesis project, a research project, a lot early on of like, what's the best way to structure? What's the best way of gathering information? What's the best way of communicating? What's the best way of keeping organized? What's the best software? And there was a lot of good shops out there. I remember specifically talking to Brian Birdie, and he was open book sharing information on processes. And
Very generous.
Very generous. Was the first one who kind of like opened up. One of the first persons I met in NARPM, ironically as well. But and he started sharing. I was like, oh man. So then I learned how to gather that information and ask the right questions and start building. So didn't build off one person's. I built off of probably 100 different people and what I thought was the right move. And I was just using logic throughout the way. So this is probably 14, 15, 16 timeframe. And as we're doing it, we implemented, that's when I met you, right? At 14 was taking in Lead Simple. And we first mastered our sales process because I was taking all the lead flow and I had Outlook, just emails coming in. I was trying to keep track of that. I was like, this is dumb. And then immediately after that, I hired the BDM, employee number 5. So as long as we answer the phone, back then it was way different than now, but answering the phone, I know everyone says this now, but that was a big deal for us. Just answer.
I think it still is, bro.
It still is. But you're right. A lot of people are not, but they're catching on though. It's not a secret anymore. Back then, it's like legit just had to answer and respond and have some kind of package to offer them. What do they want to hear? What's the customer's voice? So just to backtrack a little bit, yeah, we highly focused on that. So we were growing and partnering with people, with realtors that were selling foreclosures. So we weren't just going out and finding mom and pops. We were partnering with people selling good, houses that need to be fixed. And then we had a maintenance company to fix those houses. Then we created an inspection company to inspect those houses. So now we can do a pre-buyer inspection of a house, give an estimate because the inspector is the head of property management or maintenance. And then we were able to sell the house, buy the house and manage it long term. So that's kind of where we kind of double dip early on is we really focused on those. And then as we're going through that, we're building processes. And what I realized is I was the computer, early on is understanding. I was meeting with everybody, but I was asking all the questions and then I was forcing them to give me statuses. And I was like, this is not going to work either as we get bigger. So probably 600-ish at that time. And that's when we introduced Podio and we had to build it. And then that's really when things started to kind of take off and we were able to use a different level of staff, meaning entry level.
What year was that you started using Podio?
2016, June of 2016.
So it was pretty novel at that point.
Yes.
Workflow automation as a category really
was not a category at all. It was strictly a need that we had to have. It's something to keep us organized and it's customizable because no one knew the best processes because I had just done a 3-year research project on what I thought was the best process. And whenever a best process is done, it's continual improvement. We still live by that today. But so yeah, June of 2016, I finally decided, and it ironically, it was my intern who brought this to me, and even more ironically, is she's our number 2 in Courtney.
I love it. That's awesome.
That was 7 years ago. So, someone who just came in straight out of school said, "Hey, look at this," and I said, "Nah, that's not the right one." Then show me that again. I was like, "Wait, what can we do?" And then I'm like, this will work. This can talk. So then anyways, had to build it and work with her but so software happened. We had to get organized. We had to start reporting our numbers. What is good, what's bad, what's overdue, what's not overdue. And those numbers allowed me to self-manage. All I had to do is point at a screen and say, that's red, go fix it, please. And my expectations, the company's expectations were very clear in that expectations were set and you had to hit those numbers. If you couldn't hit those numbers, we had to talk about it. And not because it was a performance standard. It was because there must be something I missed in the understanding of that process. Something was more complex, something is taking longer. So we got to look at this and trim the fat back off. So as we did that, it was a very collaborative build out. And at the same time, we're still growing at a really good rate, because still doing the foreclosures, we're still doing a lot of just rehabbed homes, and then this started to transition into new construction. When the rehab became too expensive, or you could buy a new house cheaper per square foot than you can rehab it, then we switched our model, started working with builders, and the transition continued, I guess, and we kept on learning. In this time frame, we also learned that we needed a maintenance company that allowed us to kind of have that was separate from the property management company, so we could either have our own technicians or just have really clean automation of accounting, and have a vendor portals, and we wanted transparent. We didn't want to give the same of giving an invoice or a work order to a vendor and it goes to a dark hole. We had to control the process because that's a backbone as maintenance, of course, in property management. And giving out a work order and hoping you're going to get it back and hoping it gets done is something you can't just hope for. It's part of the business. So what we did was we built a solution on Salesforce that allowed us to give that transparency, so that we give a work order to a vendor, we see them enter the date when they're going to go, we see the date that they're going to close, and we see that they upload pictures before and after, and all the related accounting is done. So that was a big step for us, because you could never get ahead in accounting, accounting and work orders. We could never get ahead of that. So that was launched shortly after Podio 2017. And then we started growing. And then in 2018 is when we realized we needed a big step up in marketing. And that's when, we hired Pam Kosanke she's an ex-Renters Warehouse marketing head. She really came in and really helped us polish up what we wanted to do. And then right around that time is also, I think, Jeremy Pound, and off your podcast, bringing Jeremy into the, trying to be his first property management client and say, hey, this is what I want to do. I need a playbook, better playbook from us. Anyways, it seems like it's a long story, but we're almost there.
Well, so, we're here for the story, right?
We're here for the story.
Did you, what about radio? Remind me, I remember talking to you and having a conversation about you wanting to get into radio, making an intro to Yoni. Is that the name that I'm recalling? That's the name that comes to mind. I don't know if it's accurate or not.
You're close. It
evolved for you. You worked with a couple of different
push
people.
Button Productions.
So what year did you start doing radio? Because that was
2018.
That was really novel at the time.
2017, 2018.
I was reasoning based on the fact that I had seen Renters Warehouse do it. I hadn't seen anybody else do it. You took that analog and did some experimentation, which is like beyond dabbling. You really put some horsepower behind it. So that started before you started working with Pam. But once Pam comes on, then it kind of morphs and scales a bit differently.
Yeah, that was a year before Pam. So we wanted to make a name. We had to grow. And at that time, radio seemed no one else was doing it. Renters Warehouse had the case study, and that's how they grew. So Brett and Hayden, and learning, and me asking you, hey, Jordan, who's done radio? You're like, just Brenton. And then,
but at scale.
So I looked really closely at that and see what stations, all the different things that he did. And I said, well, one person case studied it, let's do it. So we went in full scale. And that means that you have a message, and you know how to measure the response rates. You know how to nurture also, so people on radio don't call that 10 or 3% of the pyramid, call immediately. And then everything else you got to nurture. So we had to make sure we were ready for that. If we're going to spend $20,000 to $30,000 a month in radio. And also, that was crazy amount of spend for what our revenue was at that time. So we had to set up a lot of things, and these are just kind of grassroots figuring it out. We didn't have a marketing expert. I just used my best judgment and worked with my internal team. And we piecemealed this together, and you introduced me where to get it recorded. They gave me an agent, and I knew that was the move to have them do all the buys, because that's again how Renters Warehouse did it. So, getting leads simple. I think that's also why Jeremy came into play with, and he helped getting that playbook, all the oppositions, and we had more than one person answer the phone. We were fully ready, and then we launched, and it was crickets for a couple of days, and maybe a week, and then we get a lead, and we're like, oh, and then we started getting another one, but it was not great. We're paying like $1,000 a lead at this point, but what I was told by the teams who were advising at the time is like, this is a 90-day commitment. You have to have a strong stomach. You can't pull out early. You got to believe in your product and you believe in your messaging. And, I was in. So we waited, and probably the second month is when the phone started to ring. And then we also started getting the lead flow, and things started happening. And we were only on the radio for about 6 months a year. What we thought was the ideal time, which was April through September. We really had no basis for that, though. That was a gut. And come to find out later in the career, it was maybe not exactly right, but it's all right. But so yeah, radio helped. It helped also. Well, it gave us a big base. We grew, a few hundred doors that year. So the return, it's hard to attribute every door to radio. You can't do it. And what do you say? How do you track it? You can't give codes. I mean, just go to the realtymedics.com, and ask for this. I mean, no one does that. So you just got to watch your overall, this is my normal lead flow, and then look back on it and say, okay, I can see the bump. I can see the bump. I can see the doors. I can see things happening, because what we were finding out is, it's a brother of who's heard it on the radio. We started getting leads from California because someone locally, heard it on the radio, and then they called their uncle in California and says, hey, switch to the Realty Medics because, I heard him on the radio, and the owner's in California. We're like, why are they putting Rick Stacy in the morning on 105.9, in California? But come to find out, it was starting to work. We also did a lot of multi-level marketing, and
tell me about that multi-level marketing. What are you referring to there?
Well, marketing on many different levels with all the same messaging. But so I met this guy down here in Orlando, and he owned a orange juice business called Homemakers Orange Juice. His name's Brandon. And he goes, have you ever heard of programmatic marketing? And I said, what's that? No idea. And he goes, well, I can tell you who bought a can of Tropicana orange juice from a Walmart in Tulsa, Arizona, or Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I can get their info. And I was like, what? He's like, watch. And then he had all this data already set up, because his friend at Data Drive Marketing, is at the company we used at the time. They had all of these endpoints and information in setting up programmatic marketing, which means they're taking credit card transactions, they're looking at rewards cards, they're creating a profile of a customer, and then they're trying to overlay it over the actual customer. We're trying to figure out the person's email address is pretty much what's going on here. But in any case, we still know that a can of Tropicana orange juice was sold in Tulsa, Oklahoma at a Walmart. So I was like, well, that's amazing. Let me talk to this guy. And so we did, and we started setting up programmatic marketing campaigns to, what I always call the golden nugget of I've never been able to find where the self-managing landlord or a person who owns a rental house, what class of society, what group are they in? And it's never been, you can't. It's so it can be anybody. It really can be. You can get it down to kind of close on a demographic, but you can't get really that close. You can't go to a conference or spend all your money on this.
Radio,
radio is going to hit it.
mass market.
30 some percent are rental homes. Now, are they in your market or not? Well, in our portfolio, only 30% live in Florida. So we knew we were going to miss something, but we did programmatic as well, along with radio. So we had these two things set up, and then they were generating some leads. They really were. Programmatic, we didn't ever get it like super dialed in. So we were, a one hit, one shot kill. But it was worth, and we learned. It was just a part of the growing pain. And so then when Pam came in and she was part of the radio, she also brought in, some high power agencies, and we started really working with a different level of radio in our local market. And so that was the next year. So I remember talking to Pam, which, she was a huge influence in the business, but I remember the first time just trying to get on her, just to get her to call me back. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you do property management. Okay." And tell me about it. And I said whatever. And then I can tell she was about to hang up. I was like, wait, I do radio and I know metrics and I know what my customer acquisition cost. I started this diarrhea of the mouth. Like, no, I do programmatic. I know how to follow up. I know these different stations. I know this and know that. And, this is my spend. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah. And we have our own software. We're doing all these things. And she goes, oh, okay. And then, she's like, oh, cool. And then I somehow convinced her.
Once you realize you're a serious person.
Yeah. And there might be a little bit of meat behind this. And I really, really wanted her help. Again, another person on your podcast, not throwing too many feathers in your cap, but yeah, you can have a lot.
I'm glad that connection is lucrative.
So yeah, she came on as our fractional CMO and helped us out a lot in the growth cycle here, and really kind of help us nail down who we are and what's the message we want to show, and be consistent about it.
All right, let's park on that. Yeah. How did that feel for you? Some people, when they go into the messaging positioning conversation, feel like this is a perfunctory, low-key waste of time because I really just want the leads. How did you relate to like slowing down and having that messaging conversation before getting into more lead flow stuff?
We were able to really define what our guarantees are, what our unique differences, what's our why should someone choose us? And also, we got to give the client or the potential lead no reason to say no. We wanted to say no, if anything. They weren't a good fit for us, but we wanted to make sure that every lead that came through the door, that we set everything up so that they had to say yes.
Offer per se.
The offer was great. We're a great company with great reviews. We have great staff, great software. Everything is great. Pricing's acceptable. We weren't the cheapest, but that wasn't the reason to kick us out yet. We give us a chance, and we never answered, which Jeremy taught us, never answer the price question until you figure out who they are and what was important to them, and then cater it to them. And then you drop the price at the end. So we really did follow. I mean, it's a sales book we just followed it. I mean, I have some really good friends in sales, and they're like, how'd you do it? I ask them all the time. I'm really good friends. And they said, we just followed the playbook. We just never went left. We never went right. We just did exactly the same thing over and over and over again. And it worked. And so working again, Jason, the BDM, who's been in the whole time, he just followed the script over and over and over again. And
we get so dialed, you almost can't screw it up.
Dialed up, and here are the guarantees. Here's this, here's that. And are you ready to sign? Ask for that offer. So what they did was they really just refined us. They got us to that. Who are we? We didn't take on everybody. We already learned and bombed that, taking on everybody, taking on multifamily and these things that were not good multifamilies, but there was doors, right? And there's money behind doors, and that's not always true. So, they really helped us dial in and really helped us just be better. They just leveled us up because they had the experience and they taught us well. So radio continued, programmatic started. We started doing commercials. OTT is over the top, doing dialed in commercials over the air. So, the way commercials work, we can be neighbors and we can be watching the same show, but different commercials can be delivered through the streaming platform based upon the users' likes, wants, and demographics. So understanding that and creating a message, we tried that. We didn't finish that project, but again, we learned from it enough to say, let's try something else. And those were ideas that like Pam would bring to us and say, hey, what about this? What about, direct mail? Everyone's heard direct mail. We're restarting a whole direct mail now. But back then we did get some more leads out of that by just having consistent drip to the same people.
So what did this add up to in aggregate? Let's say in 2022, for example, how many units did you guys add? Ballpark.
340.
On a base. Well, how many units do you manage right now?
1650.
Got it. Okay, so this is some pretty significant acceleration as you were going through these exercises.
Yeah, we're in the 200s at that range, but
what's interesting to me about you is that you have this appetite on the ops side that's obvious. Somebody talking to you for 5 minutes will just get really clear that you have this heavy ops orientation. But you also had the appetite for the sales and marketing side. You didn't put that at arm's length distance. You used the credit card reference earlier. That's the way a lot of people relate to it. Like, hey, all that's cool, but I really just want the leads. I don't actually want to like learn about this.
Right.
You embraced both sides of this. As you're doing all this marketing stuff, what's happening on ops? Does it feel like that? Is it the typical experience of things kind of keep breaking as you're scaling? What broke as you scaled, if anything?
Let me think. Ops was number one. So if ops was not number one, then marketing we turn off marketing. So and the fuel to the fire of how much time we're going to be on radio or how much time is how proficient ops is. So ops is always number one because the cheapest client is the one to keep, not the new one to buy. And we always had to focus on our churn rates, and having a stable operating well-oiled machine business was more important than marketing. But we still are in business to grow our companies, and you can't grow just by having great ops. You might not shrink as fast, but you still can't grow. So there was definitely times when we pulled back on marketing because ops was a little shaky. We're going through a growth phase. We're doing this. But we usually always, right about that time, we also always found a solution, whether it's EOS, whether it's Podio, whether it's just better people to join the team. There was some, or we fired 110 owners, 110 doors, 84 owners, overnight, and that was a huge boost to the team.
What led up to that? What was the calculus that you did in advance?
We just rated our owners because I kept on hearing names. If I hear a person's name, it has to be bad because I'm trying to stay my best out of the day-to-day ops. But whenever I kept on hearing certain owners' names and how we're compromising for them or how mean they were, yelling, screaming or just demoralizing, I was like, this is crazy. And then I was like, well, I asked the team to rate them 1 to 4. And the 4s were, we had a criteria for each one. 1 is they trusted us, we liked them, great. And 2 is like, they trust us, they asked a few questions, but overall they're still an okay person. 3 is like, they don't trust us, but they're kind of nice. They ask a lot of questions, but not quite ready to fire. And then the 4th is like mean and doesn't trust us, and gives us a hard time. So they did that analysis. And then we also looked at, when I got that, I started looking at the doors and how can I correlate the two together, not just an owner. And it came down to price. A lot of it also was anything below it. I think at the time was $1,100. We just cut it out. So unless they were a 1 or 2 owner and they had part of their portfolio below 1,000, we didn't cut them. But anyone else, that's how we came up with that number. And I mean, the 80-20 rule is like the staff had 80% more time. And by cutting that many doors, we just ripped off the Band-Aid, and we're probably around 1,000 or 1,200. So it was the 10% cut.
That's significant.
It was.
I mean, that's enough doors. That's basically a portfolio for a smaller operator.
and we just said 30-day notice, thank you. But just, almost got hugs from the property managers and stuff that, literally did. Oh man, they were giving me such a hard time, whatever. And we were able to level up. But those are the level ups that have happened throughout that just, again, can you script it or not? I'm not sure. But those are some important milestones, though, to look at. So
let's talk about some of the people management milestones. Okay. In ops, you have the systems, the processes, you have the people, the culture. What is the evolution of the people, of you as a manager, and your management philosophy look like over time?
Well, coming in here, I never thought I was going to be a people manager. So when I had two reports, I didn't expect it to go up that much. But as long as the person is open-minded and knows how to work hard, they don't have to know the subject matter. I think everything's trainable. And then empowering people to just do a good job, care, and I don't think it's quite as easy said as it is done, but the people that have been with us for a long time, or even some of the people that have left on great terms, is, we developed them together. We went through things. What do you think? Whenever questions would come to me, it was like going and seeing the lawyer or the judge. They would come in, they would know to have evidence, they would know to have their best solution, and then they would pitch it, and then I would say, "Good job." So it was that level of empowerment of people who might not have ever done it before, but either did I. So that's how I figured it out. So I just wanted them to say, "What do you think, Ben? What should we do?" I didn't ever want that question. I want to know what you are going to do, and why do you think that? So why, as always, as a corporate trainer and stuff, I always ask, do you understand the problem in front of you? And how are you going to solve it? So I think that gives a lot of enjoyment to people too, and not being micromanaged, and just trust it, do a good job. And we'll all get high fives and we'll celebrate together. So that's kind of the methodology we played. And I think it worked well. It worked really well, especially with the younger team, because that's who we were hiring, because that's what we wanted to have fresh thoughts and coming out of college, ready to learn and willing to do what it takes. I'm not saying the older crowd doesn't, but I didn't want to learn what someone else learned. I at that time, I wanted to develop it just fresh. And that's why we went with no experience and college interns and those kind of things.
What does your leadership team look like right now?
There's 6 of us. The founder, the broker, Tommy, he's on there. And then we have Jason in sales, Courtney's our integrator, and Lisa is our head of leasing and onboarding experience. And we have Ken, who's head of property management and maintenance.
All right. So Courtney's the integrator. That's an homage to EOS. How long have you been running on EOS for?
It's been 3.5 years.
That's enough time to know, to have some pretty strong opinions. What are your reflections on being all in for 3 years?
One of the most important things we've ever done. So it allowed us to become, it was like us moving out of our house, going to college, and this is the time when we were able to set our own goals, be very organized and very detailed on what we had to do. And it wasn't just my show. I say that in I didn't want to, what does Ben think? I wanted to be a collaborative effort, and by creating the leadership team and creating these specific company rocks, what I thought I had created was nowhere near what it should have been, in having rocks and everyone having goal, all the way through the organization, everyone beating to the same drum. Once there's a certain amount of levels, they can't hear a voice, so they can't, the other leaders need to lead their teams, and they have to be clear on it. We all have to be together. So it was just the structure we needed to really level up and really start making big differences in many different areas.
And
So
did it feel like that the team really embraced it, or at first did
yeah,
it feel like you were having to really push to get buy-in? What did the buy-in look like?
it was near immediate. I mean,
Wow.
Pam was our implementer. She was an EOS
Mm.
implementer. So she already knew our organization very well at coming off the marketing play. And, she set it up. She'd already done it before. She was, and we had a really good coach, but the buy-in, because it was set up well, was almost immediate. I mean, it was immediate. I mean, they voted, other than selecting who's going to be on leadership team, they voted their own roles. They bought in, um, and they like Courtney got voted to be the number 2 by her peers. And so things like that are just really cool to watch.
Yeah.
Um, and then the buy-in, this helped them. It's just like Podio. I never push Podio, but people are like, yeah, I want to fix it. I want to do this, and you can't take every request, but it made their life better. It made them more efficient, and they could provide, a next level of service to the client, and it didn't stress them out. It bought themselves in. Same with, the new call center that we have set up now. It's another thing that's just organically happening because, and when you have these new systems that come in, that's how it has to work. You can't force it. If you force it, you really, really have to believe in it. But if you're going to try to force anything, but if you have buy-in, it's organic, it goes viral, and your job is so much easier and better. So, but sometimes it takes explaining, why are we doing this? And again, I'm going back to the whys. As long as everyone's on the same team and understands the full reasonings why this is a better deal, it's a lot easier to get on board. Not knowing is this, it's poison in some ways. People are going to be, just hold back. They're not going to, I don't know, I'm going to wait and see, and things like that. Right.
See if he gets tired of it. Is he really going to be still talking about this 6 months from now?
Right. And so yeah, but not having to do that, letting it go, and people get excited, and then they're just enjoy their job more. I mean, our longevity, our retention rates of the team is really long. I'm not even sure where it goes, because most of the people are still the original seat holders throughout the company, even remotely. So that's really important to me. I'm glad that they're still here and that they're still enjoying it. And along the way, there might be some refreshes that comes along the way. But anyways, that's where we're at today.
You said call center. Let's hone in on that. I don't hear a lot of folks talking about building a call center. When I hear call center, I think there's a couple of vendors that do this in mass for after hours calls, et cetera. What was the genesis of this thought, and how has it developed over time?
So we're still pretty new in this. Somebody else, Andy Moore, who's in our Profit Coach group, has something similar. He also runs a short term. He gave me the original idea, and then, but what it is, when a person has to answer the phone, and then they get yelled at for whatever reason, my air conditioning is not working right, or this or that, the other thing. There's an emotional toll that happened. And they might have been in the middle of renewing a lease or doing a delinquency or doing something else. But now they have answered the phone. They're emotionally tied to this situation that's happening. And then now they have to stop, have empathy, say, I'll get back to you, solve their problem. But to solve their problem, they're probably going to have to stop and go research. Why did the air conditioning go out? Is there a work order? Where's the vendor? All these things. And maybe this tenant is called 2 or 3 more times in this 30 minutes, and they're still, yelling, which they're hot. It's August, it's Florida. But there's an emotional toll that happens. And then they have to take the call, they have to solve the call, and then they have to figure out whatever the heck they were working on before the call happened. And from an efficiency standpoint, that doesn't make any sense. Why we should have a person just doing this and who's uninterrupted. If you're uninterrupted, you're going to process whatever. 20 renewals in a day. But if you have a lot of interruptions and phone calls and different things happen, you're only going to do like 2. And what did you really solve? But so at least the idea of the call center is to kind of buffer the team so they can take in, and they're going to get yelled at, but they also don't have to solve the problem. They're going to take in the call. They're going to look in the system and say, and hopefully the system is updated because now the other team has more time for that work order and the vendor and things. So it's all in the system so that the person can look at it and say, oh yeah, we have this scheduled for tomorrow. Your air conditioning is going to be fixed. Is there anything else I can help you with? So they have more resources to make sure all the data is right. So by having that information, and also from a showing standpoint, from owners calling, who wants to call up your property manager and they're either on the phone, they're in a meeting, or something goes to voicemail? When was the last time you called your cell phone company? You have a question because your phone doesn't work and you get a voicemail, or call up your bank and get a voicemail. Where does this happen in major industry today? It doesn't. You call in, it doesn't really matter that I'm talking to Jordan, but my problem is this, how are you going to solve it for me? So as I started looking around for something closer to property management, I couldn't find one. Why? Why are we holding a jack of all trades, a position that's so hard to train and to be good at everything? It's a unicorn. And if you are a unicorn, you're going to be paid a lot of money and you've been in it for a long time. But I'm going to guess there's 1 or 2 parts of the job you either hate or you're not good at. Late rent. You're too nice of a person. You don't want to yell at the lady to pay her rent. You're like, oh, give me next week or something like that, for example. So I think by taking the call center and it's not just calls, it's also chat, it's showings, it's all leads, it's a little of everything, and eventually it's going to be emails as well. But it's a customer service representative to handle all non-process oriented communications
for
property management.
Well, for owners and tenants.
And leads, applicants, everybody.
Full coverage.
Yeah. Anything that's not initiated. So renewal, we initiate the renewal. A work order, we initiate the work order. A late rent, hey, Mr. Owner, you're not going to get paid. We initiate that. But anything else is non-scheduled, or it's a lead. So we just need to take care of that, because if we don't, you're going to get a bad name, or people are just going to snowball through it. And then that gives the other people way more time to do their job correctly without interruption. And they can be a specialist in 1 or 2 areas. I'm a renewal person. I'm this person. I'm work orders. I do unit turns. I do this, leasing, onboarding. There's all different departments, but you're really only doing, this is my concept at least. You're doing one thing, you're doing it super well. And you might work as a team, 2 renewal people, whatever the size of your company is. But I think it can be done much more efficiently. So that's what we're kind of test marketing, I guess, in a way. But as we do it, people are like, again, it's one of those viral things where it's like, yeah, well, this is crazy the way we used to do it. So people are like, yeah, the call center, man, it's helping us out so much. And it's already starting to happen without really making all the specialists and stuff like that. So once those ideas happen, at least I want to continue those ideas through to make sure it's set up right. It's refreshing the business.
What's the staffing model for that, by the way?
6 people.
Co-located, correct? On the same place?
No.
All over the place?
Yeah, all remote, Nicaragua and Philippines. And yeah, I think that's it.
And how do you maintain QA and oversight over those conversations? Given that they're client facing, it's high stakes, how do you QA it?
Well, the main way is agent and customer sentiment. We built it on Amazon Connect, and it can use a lot of AI in the conversations that happen. And if the customer is that upset at the end of the call, those are the calls we're going to review and ensure that it was handled appropriately to use as a training device. And then we also have transcripts and issues and resolutions for every single call that is done by AI as well. So we can quickly see and start to categorize things And then we have data, basically, is what I'm trying to say on how we QA it. We keep a very close eye. We have, a manager over that team. And the goal is to answer every call and eventually never transfer a call. So they're asking questions, live, hold please, and calling a specialist, but now they have some knowledge. We're developing a knowledge database as well. So to help in future trainings and things like that. But you don't have to teach like everything. You just got to teach them how to find information. It's like teaching someone how to Google. If you can Google our system, most likely you're going to figure out the answer. What's the status of my work order? Where do you live? Well, we already know that because it came in with your phone number. So we said, okay, I know you live at this house. I know, oh wait, here's the tickets. You've already called twice today, or you've already called, that's all sitting on the screen. So we have a lot of insight. And then we go into the work order app and we say, okay, yeah, here's the rest of the information. Have a good day. So the questions asked are, some can be difficult. I don't want to downplay it. These guys are really working hard and coming up with some really good customer service, and we're learning from them. It's only been 6 months, 8 months of full scale launch since the beginning of the year. So, but having a nice knowledge base and things like that it's going to continue to evolve, and the team is going to probably get a little bit bigger, and we're going to have, even better communications from it.
One of the things that stands out to me when you're talking about these investments, because that's what they are, technology, call center, those are material investments, is that you did this with a backdrop of maintaining profitability.
Yes.
I've seen multiple companies grind profits to zero and then quickly descend beyond that in the pursuit of some kind of efficiency that should then be producing profits, but in many cases actually doesn't. It's a really fine dance and balance. How did you think about maintaining profits while making these strategic investments?
Understanding your numbers, it's, as I said early on, you had to know those numbers and make good decisions. So, with Profit Coach and Danny Craig and that, he really helped me understand the numbers and where I can be more profitable, increase my doors or add different services and things like that. So, I never looked at it trying to increase revenue. I always controlled expenses because that's the only thing I could truly control. So I did that from the beginning and being very thoughtful for every dollar that was spent. And that can include me changing out the toilet paper in our office to, also being the CFO and also being the IT guy and also fixing stuff around the office or doing the car maintenance and things like that. I was very thoughtful in every single dollar that was spent. So then that gave me a baseline.
Why? What was motivating that? Some people would say, oh, Ben's just cheap. What was motivating that self-consciousness on the cost side?
I wanted to make sure that we stayed profitable and, again, controlled expenses. Like if I went out and fixed the car, I would have more money to spend on marketing. I would have more money to spend on Podio or a developer or do something I really wanted. There is a time and cost around my time, but at the same time, there was other things I wanted to do more, and I knew I didn't have the ability or I needed to buy it. And that could be another person. Do I want to hire an IT person to run our IT in our office, or do I want a person to be, run the call center? That didn't exist at that time, but have a better maintenance coordinator. Can I give this person a raise and I can run the books? So, coming from previous companies, that controlling expenses was the number one thing that I wanted to do. And then coming back to Danny, and when we were $170 a door in revenue, I knew that if I raised it $10, I had an extra whatever amount of money,
line.
and then I can afford to do something with it. Now, is that a person or is that a marketing play?
It's a capability.
I had capability to expand. So again, controlling those expenses with a fine tooth comb and understanding them. really allowed us to do what we needed to do and never lose profitability, because I wasn't, even though radio was calculated, it was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of money, but it was also calculated in that I knew what I had to get from a return, but I also know I just raised $10 out of my dollars per unit. So I knew I could afford it, even if it didn't work. So it allowed us to play with marketing in a sense that, all the other numbers stay the same, and I'm only playing with one variable here.
So someone somewhere hearing this is going to conflate profits with distributions. And I hear you saying that your orientation was on retained earnings to redeploy the capital within the business.
Yeah. Being profitable was there, but again, controlling expenses, whatever was left at the end of the day was left. The goal was not to make a distribution at the end of the day. Not in those years. Those are growing years. But staying profitable, just in case somebody comes along, was always important. So yeah, profit. I had a W-2, and that's what I should. Coming from a corporate world, I lived on my W-2, if not less than that. So I never went out. My personal expenses never went into distributions. I didn't need distributions to live. So that was. I guess it was out of. It didn't matter, but I knew I had to control profitability, and I wanted to be at a certain range, and of course someday be as high as possible. But in those days, it was a little bit different. But again, controlling expenses was a huge piece of the growth play, and just getting all the people I needed.
On the revenue side, what kind of shift did you see on your revenue per unit? When you first gained awareness and consciousness that this was something to juice, you took it from what to what? How much movement did you see on that side?
Oh, from beginning of Profit Coach until now, it's $93 per door.
$93 of movement.
Yeah.
93.
Yeah.
What was the starting point?
170. I'm at 263 today. And I know I'm still low compared to most people, but I'm low, and a calculated low in some ways, because again, I want to make sure I bring in the doors. So, and we're still we're just as profitable as those other guys because we're controlling our expenses. So that was the unspoken. No one's ever asked me that before, by the way. So good job.
That was, that was top of mind. You had that off the cuff, ready to, know your numbers at the end of the day. You've seen value in knowing your numbers.
I knew the numbers, and yeah, the way you formulated that question, yeah, that is exactly why. And it only caused a problem later on in the last 2 years when I'm still changing out toilet paper in the company restroom, that I was like, man, I really got to get some help, because this is not worth my time, but and we could afford it, and I could start delegating off some of the stuff that I probably shouldn't be doing.
I want to hear a little bit about some of the distractions, some of the temptations, the sirens that came to sing to you along the way. What are some of the things that you said no to that looked tempting or interesting and could have taken you on a veering path? Focus is really key. I'm such a big believer in focus.
Yeah. There's not many products or people.
Projects, biz dev, multi-market, selling software. There's got to be some distractions.
There was a lot of distractions, I guess, if you think about, take Podio and do this, or go, or, should we take on commercial? Should we take on short term, or
moving to Texas?
Yeah. Let's go into Northern Florida, but it was always, at the end of the day, it was really staying focused on, I still believe there was a big market share left in our Central Florida market to acquire. And by diluting that to move into any other market, or to spend any more time on creating a maintenance company or selling software or doing something else, was a risk to the overall objective. And the objective was just to be a really high power property management company, like highly focused on that. We didn't want to go left and right, because I didn't want to dilute that. I felt we were pretty good at what we did, but there was a risk. There was no reason to take a risk and go to North Florida, or start selling a product that I didn't know the answer to. And the products and services that did come in and we did use were, were almost a no-brainer. Like, man, I'm a logical guy, and then I'm like, that makes sense. There's a couple along the way that didn't work, but because it's probably because we grew to a size that wasn't as shifty as it was in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really staying focused of the game plan early on. We're not a property management business that also is a high power sales company, for example, or have maintenance technicians and sell to another. No, we tried that for a quick minute with our maintenance business. We started servicing other property managers, but I realized quickly that we're providing them with one of the best services that property management offers. And so I was helping my competitors. I was like, for what? What's really going to make the money at the end of the day? How are the staff going to be paid? It's from property management. It's not from maintenance. It's not from selling software. It's not from anything else. Property management is the main engine, and we got to feed it, and not dilute it. Don't starve it. Just keep on feeding it and stay focused on it.
What about brokerage?
Brokerage was a key piece in selling homes, but not my business partner was selling homes to grow our portfolio. He was, and that was thrown back into the pot. We're feeding the property management company. Now, if he went off and hired agents, we're going to be paying commissions out and making the money's going to leave the house. We wanted to keep the money in the house. So Tom was really focused on making sure if someone does sell, we sell it, keep the money in the business, or sell them another house, and so we can manage it. So brokerage was a piece, but it wasn't an expandable piece outside of his realm, because we didn't want to dilute the product again. We're a property management company. I don't care if we make X amount of dollars off a bunch of real estate agents. It was outside of our model and expertise. Neither one of us had run a company of that size, or just even have agents. We didn't know how. Teaching sales is, as well, it's much different ball game, and they're independent contractors. They're not drinking the same juice. They're not loyal. They don't have to be as loyal. They're out there making their own money on their own 1099. So it's a different model.
Very different vibe, different ethos, different energy.
Yep. Same when we had technicians, it was tough. Blue collar is, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's hard. It's just the dedication and things are just different. And that's why we went to the markup model early on, is trying to keep technicians motivated and having to worry about their time cards and all of the inventory products. And you're spending all this time on something you're not an expert in. So that's why we took this. I can be an expert in coordinating, when you go and also how you invoice. I can control all of that. But so
that's a fairly clean argument. The argument that instead of managing a fleet of technicians, I can simply do markup. So I'm getting a fair bit of the markup with none of the hassle. The pushback obviously is around quality, vendor management. Talk to me about that. What does that look like for you?
I mean, vendor management is super. I mean, it's so important. And again, coming from previous companies, that was a big part of what we did. So I knew that was super important, and it's giving them feedback, it's bringing them on properly, and then it's also monitoring them. It's almost like your kids in a way, and you again, I didn't want to give them a work order and hope to get it back someday. It is, here's the technology, here's what you're going to do, and anything you need, we're happy to do, and we'll always pay you on Wednesdays. But in return, I need to make sure you follow our system, and you'll always have work. And then we had vendor scorecards and feedback and weekly meetings and things like that we talked to them and said, hey, listen, you took a little too long. This was a little too high. This is what we would like to see. So we take it very seriously, and it's part of the success. You can't just hire everybody. You got to put time into them.
What kind of receptivity? Vendor scorecards, that's really interesting. What kind of receptivity do you find there?
Every single work order would they get a rating from price to service to quality We're sending a survey to the tenant afterwards, make sure everything's cool. Then we're rating them also back on theirs. We have 5 components of that scorecard, and it's on their vendor portal. So when they log in, they can see what their current rating is. And then we also rate them 1 to whatever number. And if you're our number 1 guy, you're going to get the majority of the work orders. So it's your ambition to do better. We didn't ever give one guy all of the business, of course, but there was some thought behind it, of course. And, but if you are a high power HVAC company in Florida and you had great pricing and you did good scheduling, you're going to get most of our business, but you 90%. And as long as you do well, we're not going to have to dilute anything down. So that's a constant thing. And the things that are still tough is, I need trust for anyone though. I need a tree vendor. I need a fence put back up. I need I don't know, a stucco repair or something that's what is the cost of that? There's a lot of variation of that. So those are the times when vendor management is not as key, because we're not going to use that tree vendor every single week or every single work order, right? But we still have to work with them, and they have to understand what we expect for pricing. But it's never ending. Just like managing, teaching, being a leader, it's never ending. You can't just hit the brakes and take a vacation. If you do, it will crash.
So as you're building this thing over a 10-year period, what are you thinking along the way is the end destination? It turned out to be the thing we're talking about. But along the way, what was in your mind's eye? What were you thinking was going to happen? Was there going to be some big acquisition in the sky? It was just going to be profitable. Did you not know?
I didn't know. I thought about it a lot. But I didn't know what the end game was, because I had never seen an acquisition of something that I was interested in. I was interested in possibly, letting the team take over someday. That's I think probably I was leaning toward a little bit more is, or replacing myself. I think I've even talked to you about that, is finding another CEO. But, that's a really, a risky play. And it's to bet all the cards on somebody else, on your business. And especially if you didn't develop them. So I wasn't quite there yet. I didn't want out that bad. I never truly wanted out. I just wanted to know what direction to take it. So that's why the Rhome deal was such an easy call, because it was what I was looking for, but I didn't know it existed.
I think what's interesting is profitable companies have the greatest amount of optionality in moves. Companies that are unprofitable, low profitability, can still sell. That happens all the time. People buy a dumpster fire of a portfolio and, you're getting a lower revenue multiple, but there's still money there. People are buying the contracts. When you have profits, you have free cash flow. And that is optionality. That's a game you can keep playing.
It is.
Of any of the options that you just listed, hire another CEO, bring your employees up, or exit. When you thought about the options that were before you, early on in the first conversations that I remember having with you, it was more in that kind of like COVID run up. I just remember some scattered one-off conversations with you. Didn't go anywhere, but there was like a 2 or 3 year window where M&A activity really heated up. It got a lot of airtime. And I feel like in some ways we're almost kind of like coming down on the backside of that as things have settled. But there was a lot of craziness going on for a period of time. What were you thinking when M&A activity was really loud? Was it tempting to you? I mean, because you have this thing kicking off free cash flow, which
is great.
It's really hard to pass up.
Yeah. Well, again, they had to hit all the check boxes, and I was interested. I wanted to know what our self-valuation was. I didn't know. I've never done an acquisition, so not knowing what you're worth is just like, taking your car down to CarMax and what's my used car worth, right? That's all I was really doing, and I only did that a few times to get me within a ball game.
Benchmark.
Yeah. So that was an option, but it didn't feel right yet, and the ones that I was watching from afar from other people selling and things were not a good fit for what I wanted to do. I would rather, operate at a lower level and remove myself, and then hopefully we can figure out something and keep the cash flow and keep the team and keep things in line. But it takes time to develop everyone, to be able to offboard all the roles I had. And so it was a journey, but there was never an offer or something that was like, man, that looks pretty good. And fortunate enough, we had enough cash flow, we didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like window shopping a little bit, but I just never. The journey also wasn't done. I think if I add something back is, I liked what we were doing. I liked building out of all of the software and the owner dashboards and everything we had. I really wanted to get that to a certain place of not needing me to run it. And we've just everything recently was accomplished for the most part. I don't run IT. I don't do a lot of these extra things or development projects and stuff like that. We have people now that can take the vision and run with it, which is absolutely amazing. So, I think over time, if Rhome didn't come around, I think that's probably the next move is to try. Maybe I wouldn't want to take another CEO though. That's just too much of a risk. Unless I knew them and I slowly groomed them, but it would not be overnight. I'd rather give my team a chance and see what they can do because I'd rather bet on them than on somebody I don't know.
You mentioned before we started the interview a conversation that you had at the EOS conference, a meeting you had sat in on that was, it was a good segue for the conversation of all the other considerations with making this move. And you shared the Mount Everest anecdote. Let's start there.
Sure. I was at the EOS conference. It was one of the last parts of the day before coming out to San Diego for Broker Owner. And it's in Indianapolis this year. And I happened to walk into this class that I had no idea about because, again, the one I wanted was the doors are closed. And it was about, it's called Ali Nasser and the Business Owner Dilemma. It's a book. And he starts off about, it was about selling your business and making sure you're ready for it. I was like, well, I guess this is kind of relevant because, I wasn't sure yet, but so I sit down and only the front row is left, and he starts going, he goes, and he points at me and he goes, so Ben, you're going to climb Mount Everest. What's the goal? And I, of course, said, which is the same answer you gave, by the way, is to get to the top. And he goes, wrong. I was like, uh-oh. I hate getting called out in groups anyways. And he goes, no, the answer is you want to climb to the top, you want to summit, and you want to come down safely. And he said 80% of all deaths happen on the way down of Mount Everest than the way up. And when you go to sell a business, you only have the eyes on how to sell the business. You sell it, but what happens on the way down? And it was a very interesting concept in that, no one ever thinks of that. Most business owners, they started out, they bring it as out of infancy, and they take it and they work their entire life. They give up relationships and everything to get to the $200 million exit or whatever it is. And these are guys in the room like sharing, man tears. It was crazy. But they given up everything. Then they got there and they sold, they get paid, but then they have no fulfillment. They don't know what to do tomorrow. And there wasn't a plan. And where are you going to invest that $200 million or whatever your sale price is? Do you have tax planning? Do you have your estate set up? Do you have life insurance? So it's like an EOS model for business owners selling. And I was just glued to this. I was like, what is this? And he gives me a book, and I read through it, and I had everything answered. Luckily, I had planned a lot of things fairly well, I thought, and except for I didn't have an exit plan. And I knew that though, but that was the hardest thing. I didn't know how to exit. Nobody exited that I saw that I was like, yeah, I want to go out that way. I hadn't seen that yet. Seen some people exit, but I could not exit and say, most of you have your job. Can't promise anything. I got paid a lot of money. See ya. And and also be tied to an earnout or something over years. That was not my. I'd rather just again keep it and turn it over to somebody else that I trusted, and I just didn't know. But it was a very impactful hour seminar, and I read that book, and I still pick it up, and even afterwards, it's like, there's still some things to figure out there, but it's super interesting. Got to figure out what to do on the way down, and also, yeah, I sold, but I'm still here. I'm not necessarily on my way down. I haven't chose to do that yet, and that helped with that exit plan. Is that the Realty Medics still lives, and we're still going to move forward, and I'm still leading it, and I have a boss, and I'm okay with that. Charles Riska is a great guy, a lot of respect for him. Rhome's doing some cool things, so don't have to write that chapter yet.
Let's talk about folks that may be thinking about this same consideration. My observation is that the industry does feel like it's in a transitory period where there's a shifting of the old guard. There is a fair bit of M&A that's already happened. There's more that's likely to continue to happen. If you were advising somebody that's coming to you saying, hey, Ben, this is a great situation for you. I'm thinking about doing this. And obviously, this isn't about who to sell to. The conversation really is about two things: the types of buyers, and there are very much archetypal buyers that are bigger than any specific company, and the mapping to your specific goals. How would you advise somebody that's in this conversation? They can see it. They're like 3 to 5 years out. They can see that this is where they're headed. How would you coach them through what to be thinking about and preparing for now?
Man, that's a great question. I think the difference is having how well run, how established is the business? Is it ready to take off, or is it a little rocky? And it's always good to get to established, ready to sell. But if it is one of the companies that is going to acquire and to absorb, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but it just depends what kind of business you think you have. Can you honestly say that this business, if I can walk away, it's going to run amazingly and it's ready for growth, it has all the things it needs? Or are there some gaps and some things that probably someone else could maybe do it better, even with resources? So you always want to get to profitability. You always want to know your numbers. I'll go back to that. I said, even control your expenses and just get onto that financial side, and then worry about the process side is the next move. And with whatever software or however you do that, hopefully it's lead simple. But it's there's not really an easy answer to get it ready to sell. You're either ready or you're not. If you're going to get it ready to sell, you're just going to get profitable. You're going to reduce your churn, you're going to increase your growth rate. They're going to look over however many years. It's not just the last year, it's over the last few years, because they want to make sure this isn't a one-time thing. And you want to get the best number, however that's calculated, to make sure you can exit appropriately and whatever makes the best sense for you.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say get it profitable to get it ready. I find that there's a subset or a class of owners that are really drawn to the idea of not getting it profitable and just going all in on growth and really not worrying or prioritizing about the finances as much. What would you say to somebody that feels like that profitability is actually going to slow them down?
Well, if you're in that big of a growth mode, I don't know. It's tough because I grew and was profitable. So
bingo.
Right. And I think you have to do it in conjunction, because if you're growing and putting all of your money in marketing, then you're spending 20, whatever your profitability is, 30, into something that's non-sustainable over time. So you got to prove both. You got to prove that you're profitable and can market and grow at the same time. It's not, unless you're going to sell on a revenue play, which maybe that's out there, but at the end of the day, you're not making any money along the way. You're just going to wait for the golden at the end of the rainbow or something like that. So I wouldn't do it that way. I would run it efficiently and grow and be profitable. I wouldn't choose one over the other.
Pivot to the person in the complete other seat, somebody early on. They're looking at the industry, they're getting in, they're maybe 3 to 5 years in, and it's not super profitable. And they're wondering, is it ever going to be, is this did I choose the right thing? Should I go into property management? How would you advise somebody early on in the business about what it could be and how to do it right?
Man, that's tough. If you're still struggling and figuring out what's up, right? It takes a special person to figure all this crazy multi-billion-dollar industry out. So, I'm not sure. If it's, I would probably look for an acquisition partner earlier than later in something like that. If you know that this is so stressful and this is not really going the way you want it to go, and you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, then it's probably finding one of those acquisition partners that would need those doors.
And that is completely different than I answered than I expected.
Well, it's the first one. You got to work on profitability, and you got to worry about running a good company.
Wow. So, all right. So summarizing, your answer is basically, if you can't figure out how to be profitable.
After 3 to 5 years? Well, one was early on not knowing how to run the business, and that is concerning. You're dabbling, you're not going out there and researching and finding the right information, and you're not implementing. You can't implement. That's okay. You find someone who can find an integrator, go into US, run it appropriately. Maybe you're the visionary and you need an implementer. Get some of those key things into play. But yeah, I don't know.
I hear you saying that this business can be profitable and therefore you should make it so. And if you find that you're incapable of doing so, you should go do something else.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
That's about the sum of it.
I think it is profitable. I think there's a lot of opportunities.
Absolutely.
You just have to be efficient and set it up right, and it's very profitable business. So I think it's doable, and majority of the people that I'm talking to, or at least in the circles, they're doing well. So you're not going to be, maybe the first couple of years I wasn't. I mean, shoot, but there was a light though. I knew where I had to go. I met the right people and things like that. So, but how many property managers are there out there? Like 60, 70,000?
Yeah. 40,000.
There's some that shouldn't be in it.
Oh, undoubtedly.
So that's what I'm more talking about. If you can't figure it out, but.
Yeah. And you have surrounded yourself with peers who are performing well. Shout out to the $1 Million Mastermind group, by the way.
Yeah. They're a great group of dudes.
So when you think about building over this 10-year period, you referred to the metaphor of Everest, up, down, and if you can't get to the bottom, what was the point of going up in the first place?
Right.
When you think about the sustainability for you outside of work over this last 10 years, what are your reflections on how you held it, how you held the tension of this aspiration that you have with everything else, work outside of life, family, etc.? I had an hour-long conversation with your wife earlier today. It was great. You have a healthy, vibrant home life. You didn't sacrifice that for getting this. But I know there's tension. I know it's not easy. There is always tension there. Talk to me through how you've navigated that.
I guess it's going to sound corny. It's a balance. There are times every day when I left, I had to turn it off, and I left. I was home for dinner every night, and when we were building, I turned it back on at 8:30 or 9 until midnight, and developing whatever it was. But there has to be a balance in everything. It cannot be all consuming. Otherwise it's not worth it. I wasn't willing to give up 10 years of my life just for one thing. So having really good friends, experiences, and traveling, keeping your mind fresh and learning other things along the way, and not be so focused on just the business, was super, super important along the way. Having good friends. Yeah. And learning other businesses, case studying stuff, just continuously learning and not getting bogged down for one thing that didn't work. Allowed me to not, I might have, there's some kryptonite, as I call it. And the kryptonite would be a really upset owner, an employee that, something's wrong, an emotional issue. Those things are the ones that would keep me up at night, because they've just like, man, we shouldn't have had that owner, or whatever. That process was fixable, and I would want to go fix it. And then I'm obsessed with that. Or any team member who's not happy. Why, what can we do? How do I re-inspire them? What needs to happen? But outside of those two things, it's a business, and we set criteria up. And if that criteria works, like, we expect a work order comes in after 5 o'clock. If it's not air conditioning, or you're flooding, or a house on fire, it's going to be fine in the morning. No one else is going to look at it either. So I'm not going to stress about that. So we're teaching the teams that, and this, there is a time to go home, and there's a time to have fun. And then you come back and you're ready to go. I don't know. Balance. It's so important.
It's the journey of a lifetime. There's no quick answer. Yeah. It's a worthy challenge, though.
It is. Yeah, not to be all consuming, though. I saw some guys in that room like that, and I'm like, man, you gave up a heck of a lot, and at the end of the day, are you happy? And it didn't look like it, at least.
Yeah, I reflect, and sometimes it can be a little heavy just to reflect on the fact that there is definitely a piece of me that is somewhat compulsive in nature. As an entrepreneur, waking up.
Sure.
If I'm being honest, waking up most days and thinking about work.
Yeah.
Light turns on, that thought is there, compelling, moving me forward. To know that a lot of that is always going to be there, but I don't always have to give in to all of it. I can be with it. I can have it by my side, but I don't have to be driven by it. I don't have to let it sit in the driver's seat. It's definitely, it's a journey.
It is. And sometimes setting up your mornings and setting up your routines and stuff is very, you can adjust to not look at your email or not do certain things. And you got to read the Wall Street Journal from 5:30 to 6:30 every morning or something. You change up how you approach your day. It will give you that time to reflect what's important to you, take some quiet time, whatever those things are, and whatever time you do it is super important, and not just jump back in. If I woke up thinking of Podio every single morning, I might have go to bed thinking about it because I was working on it so late. But now, you got to wake up and I ease myself back into it, make sure I'm making smart decisions and not being just overly consumed with the problem in front of me.
That's one of the things I'm really excited to check back in with you, like 12 months from now, to see what the feel vibe difference is, how, like, I guess how you carry it in your day-to-day kind of background awareness.
It'd be interesting, but I expect a whole lot to change. We'll see.
I love it. Yeah. And I take that at face value. I would be remiss to not ask you a little bit more on the systems and the process side. Ben, you have cultivated a bit of a reputation in the industry as being known as a systems guy. People kind of think of Sencenbaugh and they're thinking about tech, they're thinking about some automation, analytics, data, etc. I'm in this same game now. You've been a great advisor and investor. And in those conversations, part of what we've talked about is change management and helping people calibrate and think about what is required to actually get the benefit from technology. And one of the things that's I found really interesting from you from day one is that you were not out preaching, telling everybody else that they should go do exactly what you did.
Mhm.
I felt you being somewhat opinionated about the specific way that you did it, when maybe juxtaposed against what you advise for others. Walk me through your thinking for somebody else that sees what you built and is like, "Hey, this is incredibly sexy. I want to do it at my office." What's the 411 on how on how you think about that opportunity for other people?
Yeah, I'm glad your business is around so I can push them that way, because taking on a new process and then developing a software around it, that was where I got extremely lucky in having some skill set that was a perfect match in what I wanted to build out. I could do it myself, and it's probably the unique ability out of anything is how to build a process and put some tech behind it.
Which you have formal background in on the process, right? I mean, you
Right.
just mentioned casually your background with processes.
Yeah. I did that as a business consultant for Siemens Energy. And then of course, all of the processes in the aviation and NASA, I had a huge process and what exactly, knowing exact statuses and things like that. So my whole background led up to what I'm doing now. So I didn't think that was I think that was a unique ability to do both. I think it's teachable to set up a good process.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's teachable to use somebody else's good software or have another platform to then run that process. I think the process part's teachable. I don't think the combination is both. And when I started to try to explain what I did, I get glazed over eyes, and then how I connected Appfolio to Podio and all these things, I would be like, I can't. It's not. It's if you see the matrix or you don't.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is like Podio came through the industry. I'm super comfortable talking about it. I don't feel any like conflict with them as a competitor, et cetera. I remember them coming through the industry. What was that era, Ben? There was like a 2 year window where they were kind of popping.
2018.
Boost PM.
Boost PM. Jordan somebody.
Yep.
Yep. Boost PM. Todd Breen. Those guys brought that to nature. But it became such a customizable resource. Podio is not the solution. The perfect process is the solution.
Right.
And then Podio just allows you to keep everything organized.
Right.
That's all. It didn't matter if it's Podio or anything else, but when you don't want to re-automate anything that doesn't need to be automated. You don't want to hit one button and then all of a sudden PMAs go out and leases go out.
Money is getting spat out.
Yeah, because the accuracy, you can't guarantee it. And how much time did you really save there? These processes should be, what is the current status and what is my next step? If I'm not here tomorrow, can someone else sit down and tell me what the status is and what do I do next? So that's it. And it's not that's it. The last part is there can never be any duplicate entries. You shouldn't have to kick off to type it here and type it here. That can never happen, because then it's no longer efficient and you've relied on humans to transpose something.
You've introduced errors.
Yeah. So you have to eliminate all of the possibility of error besides stupidity. Honestly, like if they say they hit a button and they didn't, I don't know, type out a lease and they said they did, that's untrainable.
Right. Right.
So, so as we built out those processes, we built them what we thought was the best way of building them, that it was super clear and they all somehow link together. So we take the process all the way from renewal. If they moved out, we go all the way through move in. That there's a very defined process and they all link together. So when we built those things out, that it was just super clean. But again, doing the research to build the process, work with the team, what's the right move, and I don't know. I already repeated myself, but you can't automate to automate. You can't use Zapier to do everything in the world. I mean, it's super cool, but that's not the answer.
It becomes a black box.
It does, and it'll break.
So where would you advise somebody to start? There's so many different choices, you can get overwhelmed. And what I see repeatedly, Ben, is somebody that wants to get the whole thing right. They want to engineer the whole rocket as one giant system before turning anything on.
Yeah.
I see that you incrementally built something over time progressively. You didn't spend 3 years building the thing out before you were even using it.
No.
How would you advise somebody to navigate where to start and how to incrementally get value?
Yeah, we started with the renewal process. So I think the
renewals are killer.
Yeah. The renewal process is the most important process that's going to impact the property manager and the owner. It's the most important process in that if you can keep the tenant in, you don't have to spend labor.
Simple.
It really is in a way, but that renewal process has to be clean. It has to be done by a good person and get right all the way through it. So if they are going to move out, that's fine. But now you're kicking off the most unprofitable time for an owner ever, and it needs to be done quickly and correctly and relisted properly, inspections done, the whole world. So that's where our main bulk of our business of our processes is when the tenant says or the owner says we're going to vacate, then everything gets incredibly hard and a lot of labor. But we have to keep those things very organized and until we can get it back on the market and released. So what we did was, we started with the renewals, and then we said, okay, what's next? Okay, the tenant's going to leave. Then we built the vacant process, and then we built the inspection process. Then we built the you're building out your tenant damages in your estimate. We call it the estimate process or unit turnout process. And then you have your leasing process, your application process, your lead process, the move-in process, and then you continue with all of the one-offs, work orders, late rent, balance due, trust. Those are all separate processes that you add later on in life, really. But to control when the house goes vacant, not by the property manager, but all of them. Like, what is the whole process? Everyone does it different, and I'm surprised that there isn't some alignment somewhere. Like you did the NARPM accounting standards. There should be some level of standards. I mean, I know there's state differences, but there should be some level of standard on how to renew a tenant at least. And then if they do move out, what's the best way of doing it? Because again, my way is not the best way. It's probably a pretty good way because I did a lot of research to come up with it. And can it be better now? Maybe, because I wrote it 5 years ago. Maybe it needs to be a refresh, but there probably should be some standardization along the way. But if it works for you, everyone has their own little way of doing things differently. Why do you do that again? I mean, sometimes it makes sense, and some people just have a thing about it. And I definitely could be one of those people in some process. We don't do this, we don't do that. I mean, I don't know.
Ben, how do you relate to the owner that seems to be fairly intelligent, running a decent business, somebody who's not a clown? They come to you and they say, Ben, I purchased XYZ process automation software and I can't get my staff to use it. How have you diagnosed and troubleshot compliance and the lack thereof when somebody just doesn't like it for whatever reason?
I personally sit with them and say, show me why you don't like to use this. I want to make sure you fully understand the process that's been built in front of you. We're sitting at their desk, and they're like, well, look at this. And then I say, I'll take care of that. What would you like to see? And sometimes I'll customize it, but most of the time they don't fully understand how to use it. They're not being personally coached through like on the job training. So I had a person, Lisa, she's on my leadership team.
Lozano.
She was a late adopter of Podio, and she would appease by pushing buttons or doing certain things,
like the last minute clicking of a bunch of tabs.
Yeah, just so the report would run clean. But we kind of knew that, and it was still early on. This is really early on. But I would sit with her and be like, "What?" And then I would notice she had sticky notes all over her computer. I'm like, what is that? well, I need this to remind me to do that. And I was like, no, what do you need to be reminded of? And then I'm like, well, that answer is right here, or that answer is right here. Or you know what? We should probably add, that's a great idea. And I fully understood how she thought she should approach the job and approach the process. That, it's not the person, it's the process. We got to make sure the process is working correctly so it's useful. If they're against it, there's a barrier to understanding why and we have to explain those things. And then, I would help Lisa. I implemented a couple quick fixes and explained fully how this would work and how important it is for this and the impact of everybody else. Like if you don't do this, the impacts are not over here. It's not appeasing me because your scorecard's good. It's like, if you don't do it here, then the applications app or this app or that app are all going to be incorrect because they're waiting on your information to be right. So I took her notebook away and I said, let's try it. And she happily said, okay, let me try it. And the notebook never came back because she fully invested. And I was right there next to her to say, let me know if it breaks. If this is painful at all, you don't have to do it, and I will make it unpainful for you. So I did that with almost everyone, but that was just I want to know, even today, I still do that. Why don't you understand this? And sometimes there's scope creep. Things happen. They've been taught differently. And I sit with them now. I'm like, yeah, that's not exactly right. So we always got to go back and revise the process sometimes.
Ben, are there any situations that are maybe less tenable structurally based on the setup and circumstances? I'm thinking about seasoned, crusty portfolio style management. And they've been doing it that way for 20 or 30 years. Right. And everybody has their fiefdom. Everybody does it differently.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. What do you got to say about that?
I was like, it's not broken. Continue. But through attrition, fix it. Don't rehire that same level of person when they go. Be ready for the change. But no, they have great employees. There's no reason to take them, remove them or break. If you're being profitable and things are working, you don't need to break it. If it is unprofitable, it's a good opportunity because I like change in that it's an opportunity to make it better than it even was before. But no, I would never break a system that's working.
And if you were dealing with a skeptic, somebody, maybe one of these folks in that scenario I just described, somebody that's not the owner, somebody that's a team member, and you were trying to sell them, if somehow this came up and you were communicating the merits to them. To the owner, it's a different situation, efficiency, error reduction, etc. But to the team member, to them, serving them, what's the best case that you can make there?
How they're going to benefit by, they're going to be more efficient. They're going to be more organized. They're going to be able to make better decisions, I think, once they understand how these systems work. They might think that theirs is better, and maybe in some cases it is, but it's probably not better for everybody. It's only better for them. So I would encourage them to realize the impacts of that and why the company needs to make some changes to be better and be more competitive in the market, maybe, and we have new people starting and they don't work the same way. I look for other opportunities to kind of show them. Because at the end of the day, you got to also be convicted that this is the right move for the company.
Right.
And you can't just force things because they're shiny. You got to force things because they're the right decision. And you got to be 100% in on it as the owner. You got to say, we're going to try this. Well, probably not going to work.
I see it driving a lot in the company, including the labor model. Your labor model is more opinionated. Can you comment at all on the relationship between your labor model and your systems and why it might look different?
I mean, our labor model is, we're coaching people without experience through our processes. Is that what you mean?
Zero experience.
Zero experience, yeah. And, the buy-in is happening quicker, the training's happening quicker, and they're operating at a really high level really fast because, you can't necessarily teach customer service skills or personality testing, which is how we hire. But to train on property management, it's not that complicated. No matter who it is, it's not rocket science. Honestly, it's not. And we can figure it out, and there's somebody in the company is going to know how to do it if you do get stuck. But knowing how to answer those questions and methodically think through it and critically think, those are things that are skill sets that you're looking for when you hire. So yeah, we take the greener approach. We're teaching interns. We can teach remote workers at a high level, and they're great. They're a perfect fit for our model. And yeah, we've done well with that instead of hiring the experienced people.
Ben, this has been a great conversation. We got to end it here. I got to ask you, man, what's next?
I don't know. I'm going to continue just grinding away, and we'll kind of see where this current journey takes us. It's not over yet. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm excited for the next chapter. And it's, for right now, that's running the Realty Medics with the Rhome partnership.
Man, I just want to tell you that being on this journey with you has been like one of the most rewarding parts of what I've done in my career. I have so loved seeing the progress that you've made, being able to be in the conversations and then see you stick the freaking landing, brother. Congratulations.
Thanks, Jordan.
I'm
Appreciate
really
all your
excited
support,
for you.
man. It's been awesome.
All right.
You're by my side.
Until next time.
All right, bud.
Peace.
Jordan here asking you, what do you got? What is a question you want to ask me? Can you stump me? Can you throw me something hard, perplexing, vexing, something you feel tied up in knots with? Throw it at me. I'll do my best to try and answer that question, to dissect it, to parse out the nuance, and maybe help you get a bit more clarity. I'm looking for questions as the basis for creating content, and you're looking for answers as the basis for clarity. And wouldn't it be perfect if those two things matched up? Drop a comment, send me an email, jordan@leadsimple.com. Let's stay in the conversation. Peace.